All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you to this amazing panel for joining us, and to Mike here for kicking it off. Mike was head of engineering at Twitter, and more recently is an angel investor and advisor in a number of climate companies, and an ally of all the people who are trying to make the leap into climate. So we're really excited to have him here to moderate this panel with some amazing people working in climate as software engineering leaders. So with that, over to you, Mike.
Cool. Thanks, Jonathan. Hey, everyone. Let me kick off quickly. I'm Mike. Really excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Jonathan, to help host this conversation about software engineering and climate tech. And so stepping back a little bit, if you're curious about climate tech, but you might be wondering, are there really viable businesses to be built here? Is climate tech just lab stage experiments, ideas, hypotheticals, or is there really technology here that's ready to be deployed? Hey, if you're a software engineer, do you have skills that are transferable to this world? Doesn't it seem like it's just deep tech and PhDs in physics and chemistry? Are there really hard and interesting technical problems for SWEs to kind of dive into? Or maybe you're just wondering, where to get started, because it's such a big and daunting space. Well, if you've had some of those thoughts, you're certainly not alone. I had the same questions when I started going deep on climate tech a little over a year ago. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be hosting this conversation with three amazing software engineering leaders who have successfully made that jump already. They've gone from big tech to climate tech. They're all hiring engineers, building teams, and shipping software every day, trying to fix the planet. So with that, let me quickly introduce them and then we'll get started. So Cassandra Shah, Cass is the head of engineering at Evergrow. We're accelerating clean energy finance. Before that, she was at Google Brain working on TensorFlow. Emily Dana is the VP of engineering at Cobalt Metals, who are discovering the materials critical for the electric vehicle and renewable energy revolutions. Before diving into climate startups, she was a senior staff engineer at Google doing network engineering at massive scale. And Kelly V. Kelly was an early employee at Nest. She continued her journey also at Google when the company was acquired, and today she's the head of software engineering at Mill Industries, who are building products to outsmart waste in your home. So I'm excited to hear from all of their experiences. I'm hoping you all at home will get a chance to hear about their journeys and the insights they've gathered along the way. Hopefully we'll dispel many of the common myths around careers in climate tech and answer questions you might have about how you can bring your skills and experiences to have an impact on what I believe is the most important problem we face today. So let's dive in. Cass, maybe you can kick us off and tell us a little bit about how you found your way into climate tech.
Yeah, so when I was at Google, I was always environmentally conscious. So Google has a mailing list for people interested in climate change and doing something within the company and just outside discussions. So that was my first climate community inside the company, and it inspired me to write a blog post on how Wall Street is helping the climate crisis. I published that blog post on not part of Google official, but I published it through all the channels I was part of and connected with another Google engineer, Eugene, who was interested in the same thing. And this was around right when COVID hit in 2020, so this is May 2020, and we were just seeing all the first responders and them working on something super meaningful, and we were thinking should we go quit and do that too? So meeting Eugene, we kind of just both quit into the void without a job lined up and helped start the workonclimate.org community full of other people who are trying to make that transition as well. I volunteered there for a year and a half before I ended up joining Evergrow as head of engineering.
I love that. Emily, it would be great to hear how you got into the space.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. I was also, always thinking about doing something for the environment and trying to find what I can do. But when I started my career, I would say there were not that many opportunities for this, or at least I didn't find them. And so I had a pretty traditional software engineering career before jumping into climate. I worked at Google from 2010 to 2018. There I worked in the networking infrastructure team. So on like capacity planning and optimization, simulation of the networks that connect Google data centers across the world. So if you've used any Google service, Google Search, Gmail, YouTube, etc., you've probably used the network that I helped build. And then, this was really a very exciting experience, working with a ton of smart people, working on, having a lot of impact, pioneering new technologies. And then, I continued my quote unquote traditional software career, working on self-driving cars at Lyft from 2018 to 2021. And as the self-driving industry, I think, came to a reckoning about, it seems this autonomous vehicle problem is a bit more complicated than what we originally thought. I was thinking, what do I want to do for the next 10 years of my life? Do I want to spend that time, building and launching these autonomous vehicles in a safe and economically viable way at scale? Or do I want to really, as you said, Mike, work on the number one problem that we all face? And there was this convergence of signals. I felt increasing personal responsibility to work on climate. I saw also that there was this explosion of startups that were starting to address the problem in really meaningful way. So I, at the end of 2021, I joined this small startup, Miss.ai, to work on time series forecasting for the energy sector. So how to make it easier to forecast electricity prices and electricity generation, electricity demand, to accelerate the transition to renewable energy with wind, solar that are intermittent, with grid-scale battery storage. And it turns out that, full transparency, this was not the best fit for me. This first company I worked in, in climate, was not the best fit. And 6 months later, I transitioned to Cobalt, where I am now. We do mineral exploration. So we try to find, and we do find, the minerals that are critical for electrifying everything, like copper, lithium, cobalt, nickel. And I'm very happy here, and we have some positions open. I think one insight from my experience so far is that your first job in climate doesn't have to be your last job in climate. There is enormous value in jumping in, to start doing something, and you will learn a lot along the way. You will become more familiar with the domain along the way. And, if the first one is not the best fit, there is a ton of opportunities where you can continue your career in climate in different ways.
I love that idea that there's so much green space and that you both found kind of very different paths into climate tech, but that you were kind of very curious and kind of just found whichever way you could kind of to get in and just dove in. That's amazing. Kelly, I imagine your journey has an interesting story too, in terms of how you kind of came towards working on climate at Mill, but also probably before that.
Hi, yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me on this panel. I'm really excited to talk about everyone's experiences and to hear questions from the audience. I actually started out early in my career at Nest, which did have a climate component to it. One of the aspects of the thermostat is that you could save energy, which obviously has a climate impact. But I'll echo what Emily said, where, at the beginning of my career, I was just excited to learn how to code. I was excited to, solve really challenging technical problems. And I didn't take very seriously what those technical problems were. It wasn't until later on in my career, after Nest got acquired by Google, and I found myself working on video games over at Stadia, that I found myself missing the meaning that I had in my work at Nest. One of the departments I worked for, one of the products I worked for was our smoke detector product, Nest Protect. And, we would literally get letters written in that we had saved people's lives or saved people's homes because of the technologies that we were working on. And I really missed having that kind of meaning when you go to work for 8 hours every day. It's what you are doing with your life. And I realized like I need that in my work. Obviously, like many of you, climate has more directly been impacting me with fires and floods and heat domes. And it's really kind of come, to the forefront of my mind. And so, when the team reached out to me at Mill, I knew immediately, I need to get back into doing something that I really get a lot of meaning from. And so I started over at Mill Industries. And I'll also say, this will be kind of a theme over the day, but we're also hiring over at Mill. So shoot me an email at kelly@mill.com if you're looking for a role across the stack. But I'm really excited to hear more about people's experiences.
Emily, I'd love to bring us back to something you were saying. So you're telling us a bit about the work that you were doing before at Google. It sounds like it was kind of very technically interesting and challenging. And one of the common misconceptions one of the things I hear is, are there going to be hard, interesting technical problems for software engineers to dive into? I'd love to hear from any of you on this topic.
Yeah, definitely. I think there are hard and interesting, complex engineering problems to solve in climate. I think maybe they are a little bit different from what many of us were or have been doing in big tech. When I was at Google, it was really how can we build this planet scale computer? How can we have this distributed computing at scale with very high reliability? With how can we reduce the cost of doing this? And it's really like, it's at the bottom of the stack. It's like, how can we build this next generation infrastructure? And there is, this is super interesting. There are lots of smart people working on this. But at the same time, these are not the only interesting problems. And I think going forward, probably there are going to be fewer and fewer people working on this, right? Like now you can see with cloud computing, a lot of people can just start something very quickly that used to take a lot of effort to do before. And so I think that now I see the frontier, right, of interesting problems is more on the application side. Like it's how can we apply ML to not only this small sliver of like making good relevant ads, showing relevant ads to people, but how can we use ML to applications in the real world, in the physical world. And this is also very challenging, very interesting. It requires, I think, a little bit of different mindset to have this interest for the application, to be interested in working with non-software engineers, which personally I find super interesting, like to be exposed to different backgrounds, different ways of thinking. And I think this is, for people who like complex problems, I think this multidisciplinary environment makes for the most complex and most interesting problems.
I'll chime in there. I don't know if I have a super fair basis of comparison because mainly just worked at Google prior to climate. So we changed both the size axes going to a startup and as well as the vertical jumping into climate. But I would say there are schleppy tasks like everywhere, like even at Google, like being on a machine learning team was like super cool. But like most of the work I was doing was basically like data plumbing, like just like massaging like the tons of data that Google has into the right format so we can feed it into a fairly standard neural network. But this process works because we have Google scale data. And currently in a climate startup, it's like Emily was saying, the problems are very different. Is we don't have a ton of data, so now it's more of a design challenge, or like how can you partner with the business side team? How can you help them generate some software prototypes that get you your first customer to partner with, and yeah, different types of problems. Kind of depends on your appetite, I'd say. But I really enjoy it. I would say like my experience in big tech was the problems were pretty picked over. Like it was just the problems that were left were like cutting edge world-class problems that no one solved before, and like super schleppy things. The ones in the middle had kind of been picked over. And here in a startup, you can do the whole gamut. So you can really branch into, like, if you are more into the product side or a business side, like you can wear hybrid software engineering flex hats, and that's really valuable to the startup.
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of reiterate the same answers. There's so much greenfield work in climate. There's so many industries that are, the industry that we're in, which is waste management, it's trash. You look at the technologies that they're applying and they're taking a mixed bag of trash and putting it into a hole in the ground. Like there's no tracking, there's no sorting, there's nothing. And so I love these kinds of spaces that haven't gotten a lot of attention. They've been overlooked because you can really build things from scratch. There's so many opportunities to problem solve, and exactly what Cassandra's saying, where you're coming from big tech and all these problems are really picked over and you're working on these like last little optimization problems. In the climate space, there's a lot of opportunities to just build things from scratch, which is really exciting.
So I guess one of the questions that I'd have kind of following on that is, we've kind of all alluded to the fact that there's a lot of startups in the space, and obviously kind of everyone's familiar with startups inherently kind of carrying a lot of risk to them. Why do you all think that climate tech startups are well poised right now to build great businesses, be profitable, and be, really great places for people to find their next careers?
Kelly, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. I'll jump in. I'm so excited about this space. I think 5-10 years ago, was not, it might have been too early, but I think right now is a really interesting time. There's a lot of interest in climate from both consumers. So I kind of look at our first thermostat that we built at Nest. We didn't really mention climate at all. Like climate was sort of our like secret thing that we were doing, but consumers were really interested in, one of the first IoT connected products. Now, climate is something that's at the forefront of consumers' minds. It's on the forefront of businesses and government minds as well. And there's a lot of investment in the space. Investors are starting to get really interested in climate. So to me, this is the sweet spot of, it's not too early where people aren't really thinking about it, but it's not so late that we're running into these problems where all the problems are picked over and, we're working on optimization problems. It's really an exciting time to get in. There's a lot of funding and a lot of like greenfield work.
Yeah, also I can add to this is, risk is relative. We all have in mind that working for a big enterprise with a lot of employees who are profitable, it's a safe job. And I think what you've seen in the past few weeks is that actually not so much. And so I agree with Kelly. There is so much VC funding in the space, so many startups that are now, they're not only seed stage, Series A, Series B, Series C, right? The funnel is growing, and a lot of these companies are growing very, very fast. So I think it's an exciting time, and I think it's the right time to jump in.
Yeah, I think with the software engineering skill set, there isn't much risk in that, like startup comp, like you get a salary too. You get a salary and it's pretty decent. Like your equity is no longer a cash equivalent, but your job is to make the equity worth something. But even if in an unfortunate case that the equity at Evergrow means nothing, like the salary is totally fine to make a living. And with the software engineering skill set, like you can, I guess I haven't been through a recession, but it feels to me being on the hiring manager side, like always trying to find good people with like a full stack background. Like it's like I spent maybe like a third of my time in the first year just hiring and trying to find candidates that qualified. So I think it's a very safe skill set to have, and he will always be in demand as far as I can tell.
Yeah, also to add to that, like a question a recent candidate had for me when I was, trying to convince him to join Cobalt was like, what does a career in climate look like? Will my skills, my technical skills atrophy because I'm not working in these super large scale, very mature systems? And what I told him is that, there are a lot of new technology that we are pioneering, like let's say, like physically constrained ML models, when not just like you have a bunch of data and no constraint, but things that are constrained by just physical phenomena. And that is a skill you can acquire here. And that skill is going to be more and more in demand for weather prediction, for all sorts of chemistry and physics modeling and etc. And so I really do think that, there is a high probability that if you join, you do some amount of due diligence, you join a startup in climate, high probability that you're going to do well. And in the event where it does not go well, I think you will be, your skills will very, very much be high in demand, and you'll have a long career in climate.
Okay, so I think it'd be really fun to dig in on one point here, which is, Emily, you've brought up ML a couple of times, and Kelly, you were talking about how things are very different than they were 5-10 years ago. I can certainly say that from my vantage point, it feels like the hardware, the sensors, the deep technical solutions are really kind of like advanced at a point where they're ready for deployment. So where does software fit in? Like what role does software play? Like we heard a little bit about ML, but what else kind of is gonna be the role that software plays in this next phase?
Yeah, I mean, at least I can speak to, Mill, our company is building a solution for food waste in the residential sector, which is just a fancy way of saying, it's a consumer electronics product, something with a user interface. And so we have a software team with expertise in challenging problems in user behavior. So, figuring out that intersection between software and user interaction, where you can get kind of these non-deterministic inputs into your software algorithm, because you're not just plugged into some like nice library. It's like users can put anything they want into our device, for example. And so these are really challenging software problems across the stack in embedded firmware, cloud, mobile app, web. We have software engineering, across that entire stack. And so, yeah, there's hardware involved, there's operations and logistics involved. You're working together with other teams, but and food science, we've got a number of like odor management. There's a lot of really interesting novel technologies where I'm learning a lot more than I was, in my previous role. Kind of working more in a larger team where I had a lot more support. In a startup setting, you can really have a high responsibility and high impact, kind of working on all kinds of different problems and working with non-software engineers to solve the problems that they're trying to solve with the tools in your toolbox, which is software.
Yeah, I have a similar experience at Cobalt. It's really a collaboration for us, between geologists, data scientists, and engineers. And we really need the three skill sets to make the magic happen, to do mineral exploration in a different way than traditional mining companies. And so we are, using basically the full stack of developer, tools. We are building like a data platform. We are automating the ingestion of data. We are doing ML. We are, solving this data to make it accessible and useful. So really, all the range of software skills. One thing I'd like to mention is like when I was looking for a job in climate, I was thinking, where as a software engineer, which industry or which company should I join such that I have the highest leverage? Where is software engineering so central that me joining there will really make a difference? And I think, yes, I think you should be looking for such situations. But at the same time, I would say, like, not all the people today working in non-climate software engineering roles actually work in industries where, software engineering is like super exciting and really central to the company and etc. I think we need to have kind of this, maybe check our ego a little bit and see, like, I would like software and climate to become like very boring and mainstream and nothing spectacular. And I think we will need, like, the whole economy is changing, and the software is needed for the whole economy. And we should also have like software engineers who do like kind of, boring things, but for like they do today in their regular day-to-day job, but they do it for climate companies. And so, you don't need to be in a company where software is the highest leverage point to make an impact in climate.
I think one of the things that really kind of like resonates when I see a lot of climate tech companies, and which is consistent kind of with what you're saying, is it's almost like a lot of climate tech companies start with product market fit from day one, because they're replacing a solution that already exists in the world, but making it more profitable and making it cleaner for the environment. I'd love to hear a little bit, kind of switching gears. Maybe Cass, you can tell us a bit about, because you've been so actively involved in the community. What's the community in climate tech like?
Oh, wow, it's really friendly. So I remember when I quit my job and was just working on workonclimate.org and just trying to spin things up, we started an expert office hours program where I'll put a link, or maybe someone put a link into the Slack, Zoom, but basically climate experts have just opened up their Calendlies for anyone to talk to them. Just book time, you'll get a group office hour slot, and you can ask them any questions. Like, people are just really excited to bring other people into the field because they view this as a very time sensitive, urgent thing, and they can scale their impact by helping other people transition to the space. I remember one of the first friends I met in climate, I met randomly on LinkedIn. Sarah Peterson is a climate VC, and she just reached out in response to my goodbye and leaving Google to work on climate post, and she's like, "That's great. I'm in climate. Like, let's meet up. Let me know if I can help." And yeah, the space has become so friendly. I personally feel bad because a lot of people reach out to me as a community organizer, and I'm a little personally like inundated with things, but we really try to share all the resources that we found helpful in a scalable way in creating workonclimate.org. So there's like Slack community, there are learning groups where you can meet other people interested in the same vertical, the expert office hours program I mentioned. So yeah, we're really trying to like, I think that community is a good example, and MCJ as well, are like examples of climate communities being so helpful to help others transition, that I think that's very unusual, and you should take advantage for your own journey.
Yeah, and also I what is it like to, like, in the culture inside a climate company? I think it's more of the same. Like, people are very helpful. They're like, I work a lot with geologists, and it's, they're always happy to answer questions and to share their knowledge. I think it also makes a lot of difference when people are mission aligned. Like, it's so refreshing that you don't have to push for certain initiatives or like fight organizational battles or try to influence people. Like, I find my job like comparatively like very easy, because like everyone wants to move in the same direction, more or less, and we get so much done. And this is really high velocity, high impact, having a lot of fun with people from different backgrounds. Yeah, so I personally, I really like it.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the exact same experience, where it's one thing to work at a startup where everyone is aligned on, getting that V1 product or that V1 experience shipped. But it's another level with climate. Everyone is so passionate and cares so deeply about the same problem set. It's just a different type of I guess, alignment and synergy across the company with everyone that you work with. And it's just such a great environment.
Kelly, you're building something that's really physical and real world. And I believe that's obviously coming back very similar to kind of what you did at Nest. But I think it'd be really interesting for the audience to hear a bit about, like, who do you work with? Who does your team work with on a day-to-day basis? We've alluded a couple of times to, a lot of this work being so cross-disciplinary. What kind of experiences are you gaining kind of working with people from different backgrounds and with different skill sets?
Yeah, I mean, and to talk to your question earlier, I mean, everything in our company that happens, it happens with software. And so we're a highly cross-functional team. We're building a physical product, which is a food dehydrator for the home. It's a hardware product. We have, an in-house hardware team, factory operations, as well as food chemistry and scientists that we work with. That product is IoT connected. So, we have a cloud team and a mobile app team, as well as, our website where, we've got logistics where we're picking this food up using the post service to get it back to us in, an effective, efficient manner with the post trucks already going to people's houses. So, there's external entities that we're working with, APIs and whatnot that we're plugging in, as well as, a business and operations team handling the logistics, handling the post-processing of the food stuff when we get it back in our own facilities. And again, external partnerships. So yeah, the engineers across the different teams are working highly cross-functionally with everyone in the company. There's a lot of data and analytics that people are really excited about. It's an industry that, has no data, has no tracking, there's no kind of confirmation when you put an aluminum can in the recycling bin that it actually gets to where it's supposed to go. So there's a lot of like interesting problem sets in that space as well. So yeah, it's a highly cross-functional role.
Yeah, it's similar at Cobalt. So we have I guess a little bit less cross disciplines, the number of disciplines, but the main three are geoscientists, data scientists, and engineers. So engineers work mostly on making the data accessible and useful, productionizing software pipelines, making distributed computing available, so that data scientists can create all this sophisticated analysis of the data. And then the geologists they're kind of a human in the loop. They're the experts. So they can tell us about, how to interpret the results of those machine learning pipelines, how to interpret the data, what kind of data we should gather. And it's really a three-way collaboration. I think that's what makes kind of, life interesting, to work with people who have different work cultures, different backgrounds, different expectations, different complementary outlook on how to solve a problem. And I think this is I personally, again, I really like it.
At Evergrow, we tried something different where we're basically a fully in-person team. So we all show up to the office and we all sit around the same very large table. We sit around a very large table, so you can always hear other people's conversations and even as engineer, have a pulse on what's going on the business side. And because Evergrow is working in pretty the weeds of renewable financing and tax equity, we're constantly doing expert calls. So that's pretty interesting. So we use an expert network called TIGAS to find experts to interview and use that to inform what we're doing. And we have accountants and lawyers and so there's a lot of expert consultants and lots of people I would never run into in a standard software engineering role.
Amazing. So narrowing us back to software engineering specifically for a second, we've seen a couple questions in the side of the chat come in around kind of early career entry level kind of roles in climate tech. What advice do you have, or just how have you spoken with candidates before? Are you advising candidates go get a role at a software company, then come back? I imagine not, but I'd love to hear your take on kind of how someone who's just coming into the workforce with a software skill set, really drawn to climate tech, how should they think about getting involved?
Yeah, so at Cobalt, we have this associate position. It's called associate data scientist, but it's kind of an entry-level position where you can learn about data science, engineering, and geology all at the same time. And so you're exposed, you work with these three disciplines with people who are more senior, who can teach you this, and then you do simple tasks and go from there. And it really gives you a lot of exposure about different disciplines, and it lets you also grow into these and kind of sharpen your interests maybe for one of the three. So I think this kind of in-house kind of learn on the job program I would highly recommend. That being said, I think there is a lot of value for working at a established software company where you can learn good software practices. I don't think you learn this in college. I think you learn this at companies like Google. But there is definitely a trade-off, being in a fast-growing startup, you will learn a ton there too.
I'll jump in here. To me, this question is more, it's less about climate versus not climate, and it's more about a big company versus a startup, and an acknowledgement that a lot of the companies in the climate space are startups. I think when you're early on in your career and you're working at one of these big companies, it's very likely that you're going to get like a mentor and a small sort of bite-sized project and a lot of hand-holding. And you'll get a lot more guidance, but you'll also be limited on your opportunity and your potential. At a startup, you're going to get a lot less guidance, but you have no limit on your opportunity and your potential. You're only limited by what you're able to take on. And so I think it comes down to, a personal choice for folks at the beginning of their career. If they want more guidance or if they're more of a self-starter and they can kind of take advantage of that opportunity. I'll say, from my own experience, my first job out of college, I was employee number 38 at Nest on like a 3-person embedded team, coming from a computer architecture background. So I knew programming, but I was still even kind of learning programming on the job. And it was an awesome experience. I got so many opportunities to learn. I took advantage of them. And I'm so happy that I started my career out in a startup. It was a great experience for me.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the startup. Like at Evergrow, we just because we don't have that many positions that we're trying to fill, so we were trying to hire for pretty senior people, like five plus years of experience. But I know another friend who has a company not in the climate space, but basically their strategy is to hire always fresh grads, and they have like a really good mentorship program and knowledge sharing program to ramp people up. And another thing I've seen in the climate space is a friend I met in climate, Fatty, he straight out of undergrad created his own tree planting startup on the side. So I think he was still going through grad school or had another job, but he just built his own project on the side. And since you're competing with startups anyways, like it's a lot of prototyping that you could do yourself. And I think that would be like a very impressive work artifact. Like maybe it takes off, or maybe, but you've proven that you had all the skills to do it by yourself. So I think a lot of startups are just a little risk averse to taking on someone without without the line on the resume or the number of years of experience. But like if you prove that you can do it, I think that's a different story too.
So maybe to draft a little bit off some of the mentorship conversation, big tech is pretty known for investing in a lot of programs and processes for developing talent over time. You're all in leadership positions now at your own startups. And I'd be curious to know kind of like, what did you learn? What have you brought? How do you think about kind of like implementing some of the best practices, or what you got from big tech and bring to kind of like the startup environment to really create an environment and culture where your teams can thrive?
Well, I can take a first shot at that one. So as head of engineering at Evergrow, I mean, we have like a 4-person engineering team, so it's very so take that in mind, very, very small. But it was also my first managerial role. Like I never managed anyone at Google. I was an IC. At Google, I really I alluded to this earlier, but like there were really hard problems, and it felt like I often felt like I was left to like grapple with them by myself. So I would like head bash against them, make progress, share it with my manager, like on a one-on-one, like once every week or once every 2 weeks. And I just felt kind of like alone with the problem. Like I could go and ask other people for advice, but like they also had their own problems. Like it didn't feel super collaborative. And one thing I think that we did really nicely at Evergrow is like, I'm the first to admit when I like don't know what's like, oh, what's that? Like, can you explain that? Like, just like super curious and like non-judgmental about like like lack of knowledge, like just candidly coming out of Google and into like the open source world. I'm like, oh my gosh, there are all these like libraries that I've never used before. And I'm actually really glad that I left Google and now I can like ramp back up and keep up to date with everything that's going on. But I think just being like open and transparent about like what I don't know makes it safe for other people to do the same. And so for our daily like Eng stand-ups, oftentimes like if a task has been delegated to someone and they are struggling with it, it's kind of a team problem. It's not really that person's problem. Like that person has levers to pull, like they could kick off the problem to someone else if someone else will like volunteer for it, or it's just candid, transparent, a little bit more team oriented, I'd say.
Yeah, I'll say I'm very glad to have had the experience at Google in this very big company, because I view that as kind of like giving me new tools in my toolbox. The way I approach these things is balancing sort of bureaucracy and effort with the value that you get out of things. So I've seen, very high touch sprint planning sessions, and it's like, what is the most value that we can get out of that? What are the most important pieces of that we can apply in a startup environment to give ourselves a little bit more process and procedure without, a ton of bureaucracy. There's a lot of awesome automated tools and testing and whatnot at, Google and these larger companies. We're in a startup space. We have scrappy teams. We're building from scratch. What are the most valuable aspects of that, and how can we implement it in a startup space while not putting in, so much engineering effort and recognizing the realities of like the teams that we have. So yeah, I think it's really beneficial for me to have been in these larger spaces, because I think they give you those tools, and you can do that cost benefit analysis to bring that value while balancing it with, the resources that you have in a startup environment.
Yeah, my experience is similar. I think having worked at larger companies than my, Cobalt, we are about a bit less than 100 people now. It's like you kind of know what the end state would look like in terms of automation, scaling, processes, etc. And so you understand what to aspire to, and also what not to aspire to in terms of rigidity, process, etc. And the questions that we have now is, how to introduce a bit of structure, a little bit more formality in the things that we do at Cobalt, and knowing, I think, what to avoid is very beneficial. Also, I think what I really like is this, we were talking about startup versus big tech, or small versus large companies, is that we have a lot more freedom and flexibility. So what we like to do at Cobalt is really to experiment, to do, okay, let's try with, we want to do this thing, let's try once and see how it goes, and then we'll iterate. And that, we have the luxury of trying things at a small scale before having to think about, okay, how to scale it up and how to propagate it to, 100,000 people company. And so that freedom is really essential, and we try to make the most out of it.
So taking a question from the audience, is there anything from your past work that you've had to kind of unlearn in this, whether it's because you're moving to climate tech or to a startup environment, or helped your teams kind of like unlearn?
So for me, I would say not necessarily unlearn, but what I thought was fast at Google is really, really slow in startup time. And so what I learned is we need to, be, not as maybe, avoid really analysis paralysis, and really move very fast. And again, move with this experimentation state of mind of, let's try things as fast as possible. Obviously not crazy or random things, but let's try as fast as possible. Let's try to iterate as fast as possible. And it's okay to, to break things in the process or fail. But like the velocity aspect is something that I really learned at startups.
Yeah, I'll also echo that. I don't love the term unlearn. I think what I would say is maybe recognizing your own biases and where you've sort of learned these things in the context. I'll combine kind of my answer with another question I see in the Q&A here. Diversity on teams, that I'm running and also at the company at large is very important, whether that's, gender or background diversity, but also diversity of technical background and work background. So we have folks from, one-person teams, we have folks from large companies, we have folks who have experience in consumer and who have experience in industrial, who are from waste management, who are from other industries, and everyone kind of comes with their own background and their own biases. And so I don't want to say like unlearn, but recognize, where you're coming from, and the different perspectives that everyone has, and being flexible to understanding, that we're in the context that we're in, and where you can leverage your experiences or have a different perspective. That's very valuable.
Yeah, I think one thing that I had to shift was in hiring. The Google interview process is pretty much like grab a algorithm question from this book, and the goal is to be like very unbiased. Like if you get the question, you get to move on to the next level. If they get the question 5 times out of 6, then kind of get hired approximately. But like your personal feelings don't really go into it. It's just very objective. Like, did they get this very narrow question or not? And I think one thing that is interesting for service, like definitely probably don't want to give people an algorithms question, because like you don't have the infrastructure to train just a random smart person to do the job. So our interview questions are much more closely related to the job. So like our full stack engineer question is like, hey, in 4 hours, can you spin up the infrastructure to take in some numbers from a website and output a PDF of those numbers? So it's testing like infrastructure deployments, testing like full stack abilities, also testing some design sense, and that's one of the secret tricks is like, do they deploy it or not? Or do they just like leave you like a zip file for you to run yourself? So I think like how you're screening people, like, or the people that you're choosing really matters in a small startup. And I guess I didn't realize how powerful that is. So not just the interview phase, but like how does that person add to like the atmosphere of the team? Like how does that person incrementally like diversify the team, or like change the way that we think, or and that you just have a lot more say in what the culture is of the company. It sounds obvious when I say it, but like it's I feel like it's, if you don't consciously design it, it becomes an accidental byproduct of your processes. So you might want to consciously design it.
Yes, I love that you brought up culture here and kind of being very intentional through the process of hiring. Why don't we get really specific here? I'd love to hear, and I'm sure the audience would love to hear, what's unique about the cultures that you're all building at your companies? What are you uniquely trying to kind of craft that really kind of sets the culture of your companies apart from peers and even like big tech?
Yeah. I can kick it off. I think the culture really comes from the founders and the early employees. So shout out to our CEO, James, James is pretty unique in that he is very intellectually curious. He was like a lawyer by training, and then went and started a YC startup. And I ended up joining Evergrow just because he's the best salesperson that I've ever met, in addition to being like nerdy, curious, but also just really good at selling things and making people feel heard. And I think for the people that we've tried to hire, we're looking for similar qualities, like just people who are very honest and kind, and mission oriented and fast, and like results oriented, but nice, like people we want to hang out with and sit around the same big table with.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it sounds like we're building very similar cultures. Just I think the thing that's unique at our company is just the level of transparency and the level of communication. I mean, especially coming from like some of these larger companies, but even some, startup environments that I've been in, just really honest, transparent culture. Definitely people that you enjoy working with, that people that are kind, that treat each other with kindness and respect. And then a lot of deep thoughtfulness. This is a really hard problem that we're trying to solve. There's a lot of greenwashing in this space. There's a lot of ways, that we could, kind of get off in the wrong direction and not keep climate in mind. And so, one thing that I really like about us is from the start, we've had a person dedicated to, actually running the math on our impact for the products that we're building, to always keep us honest and always make sure that we're going after, the most climate friendly trade-offs when we are making trade-offs. And then posting that on our website and being transparent about that with our customers and like taking that culture, to another level. Our head of marketing likes to think of, the way that we do marketing as reflective of our internal culture. And I really like that philosophy that, it won't ring as authentic to your customers if you don't practice it, internally. So it is just a really special culture. And I'll echo what I said before about just folks being really passionate about the environment and climate and working together on those problems.
At Cobalt, we also, have, I think, similar values as what Cassandra and Kelly talked about. One of our, important values is ethics. Mining industry is dirty in all sense of the word, in general, and so for us, ethics is really number one. Like how we interact with governments and local communities to fight corruption, to have minimal environmental impact when we drill, to have anti-discrimination practices, to have physical safety for our employees, for our contractors when we go in the field, etc. I think that really sets us apart in the mining industry. And then compared to, I would say, more engineering-focused companies that I worked in before, I think Cobalt is really science. The DNA of the companies is science in terms of having this experimentation mindset, having, looking at the data, having integrity in how we interpret the data, having this understanding of what is uncertainty and how do we quantify uncertainty and etc. So science and ethics are really important for Cobalt.
Awesome. Okay, a rapid fire question before we close out with one final question. Remote work. Are you all hiring remote teams?
Cobalt is fully remote. So US, Canada, anywhere in those two, we hire. And also we have extensive operations in Zambia, in Africa. So we hire there too.
Sorry, I saw that you unmuted, Cassandra. So we're not hiring remote. We work a hybrid model in the Bay Area, and I can get into that, but that's a rapid fire question. We just find it's a lot easier I find it's a lot easier for a startup environment where, we're iterating quickly and people haven't worked with each other before, to have that kind of in-person communication, that in-person time.
Evergro's not hiring at the moment. We filled our last lead position, which I'm really happy about, so I can get my time back. But I wanted to give a shout out to Jonathan. I call Jonathan my fairy job father because he actually got me my job at Evergrow. So try Climate Draft for looking for your next position. Also,
well, that's a great. Sorry,
oh, sorry.
It's a great transition there because I don't think everyone will have a fairy job father like Jonathan. So what's one piece of advice that you all have for folks trying to get into climate tech?
My fairy job father has run one of these panels before, and he wrote up a blog post of all the takeaways from the last panel on software engineering into climate tech, and it might be helpful, like maps of the climate space, so you can gauge your impact. I saw some questions on that on the Q&A, as well as different repositories of like job databases and communities and job boards.
Yeah, I mean, one way is to send me your resume at kelly@mill.com. We are hiring. But I think my more general advice is look within your own personal network. You know, what, even if you are beginning on in your career, your classmates from college, you know, is your personal network. That's your first kind of kernel of your personal network. If you're further along in your career, even if you haven't talked to folks in years, you know, with these recent Google layoffs, I'm reconnecting with people who I haven't talked with in years. And it's, you know, it's like we just spoke yesterday, and obviously, like, you know, you don't need to keep up that communication to have that really strong network. So I would say start with your own personal network, make a post on LinkedIn, ask people that you know that you're looking in this space, because those will be some of the most interesting opportunities that may not even be advertised yet.
Yeah, my piece of advice is to jump in now. The time is now. This is, you know, urgent and an important problem. We need all the, you know, smart people we can get to save the planet. Not to be overly dramatic, but, you know, the time is now, and there are really a diverse set of industries and companies you can have impact in. So I would say don't over optimize. Don't try to find, you know, the one company where you have the highest leverage. You can have a lot of impact in a lot of companies. And so as soon as you find something where you can, you know, envision yourself working in that company with those people day to day and having an impact, you know, on climate, just, you know, resign from your current job and accept the offer and go. That's my advice.
Well, yes, all around. I can say from my experience, I was blown away by when I just dove in, how many people from my network were already in climate tech. I had no idea, and they were already there. They helped me along the way. The community is fantastic. I just want to give a big thank you to our panelists, Cassandra, Kelly, and Emily. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing all that you've learned. And I hope that we'll get to see more and more people joining the space.